This is Ella Howard, and in this short tutorial I'd like to show you a workflow in the Turnitin grade mark system to grade assignments where you want to put comments in the text. So in a previous video I showed you how to work just from a rubric, and you can do that on the Brightspace side, and that works fine if you're happy to just tick some boxes and move along. But for longer, more detailed assignments, or for composition assignments, I would imagine, where you want to put some quite specific feedback on the text, I think an easier workflow is to use the Turnitin system. So when you set up the assignment, you want to enable Turnitin. You don't even have to use the similarity checker to use the grading system, but you do have to enable it. You can also enable that after the assignment has been created and even after student work has been submitted. I found that out today. I was very worried, but no, it worked fine. So once you've done that, then when you log into Quick Eval and you drill down into the assignment that you're here to grade, I'm showing you what one of those student assignments looks like. You then want to click on the Edit button and the picture of a pencil, and now you'll go into the Feedback Studio for Turnitin. So for those of you who are using this on the Blackboard side, you will be ahead of me on this. You already know how to use these quick marks, but they were new to me and I was pretty excited. So there is a pre-populated set of quick marks which lets you drag these tiles over to the text. So then you can add your own, which is what I did. So let's say sentence fragment, right? You could drag that and just drop it on the text. I created several of my own for the comments that I say all the time, and I'm in the process of customizing this set. Some of my favorites include not a novel, something I say a lot as a history professor, terminology, weak conclusion, observation, where I just say, hey, that was a good observation. So I've started to standardize these. So you can do this in several ways. You can just drag a tile over. These are from my commonly used set. If you want to add a comment directly in the text, you can use the Quick Mark button, which will give you that set of tiles right here. Or just clicking into the text will also allow you to pick the bubble, and the bubble lets you write a comment. So you can write your comment in here, and if you're really fancy, you can assign criteria to that and tie it to the rubric. Maybe that is needed in a class like composition or something like that. But for me, I can just write a comment, and then convert to Quick Mark will let me turn it into one of these tiles in my commonly used set. Alternately, if you want to put in-text comments, you click on the font, and then you could write something here. Great job, something like that. All right, and then that will be something that they see. And I think those comments are a good idea, using the tiles and even this hand-typed inline text, because at least the student will see it when they look at the page. And I fear that otherwise they're just not going to click on my little bubbles. You can also add voice feedback and longer text comments if you want to leave. But most importantly, I think you can also access the rubrics right here from this panel. So for this assignment, I built the rubric not in the Brightspace side, but over in the Turnitin side. And I did that by clicking on the gear, the little picture of a gear, and that gives you the space. You click on the hamburger on the upper left, and that lets you create new rubric, or duplicate this rubric so that you could modify it and turn it into something else. So here I use the 4 categories, exemplary to not present, and I ran my criteria down the left and put the weight here, right? So description section has to be 200 words. It's 15% of the grade. And I put the details here. Exemplary is 100 for me. Meets expectations was an 85 on this. Developing is a 60. You didn't even try. That's a 0. So now when I'm grading, right, if I want to assess this paper, I can click through each of these criteria. So if they were developing, meets expectations, this is nice because it goes really quite quickly. I typically work through and I do the tiles first. Then when I've read through the paper, I have that in my head. I pop into the rubric, I tick those boxes. Now you hit apply to grade and you're going to see that number not only here but up here at the top. Now is a good time to stop and think, is there any type of late penalty that is going to be applied to this if I'm docking it 10 points? Or alternately, even though I followed the rubric and I want the student to know, let's say this, some of these are higher or lower, sometimes that grade is just a little harsh, right? And as the instructor, we have the right to override. I'm not trying to crush people's hopes and dreams, so sometimes if it doesn't align with my holistic grade, what I would have given it were I not using a rubric, then I will bump grades up in that case, right? So I only bump them down if there's a late penalty being applied, but I bump things up if I sit and I look at what I've done with the rubric and I think, that's pretty harsh, right? That's not, normally this would have been a B-. I don't need to be passing out D's just because the magical rubric said so. Because the comments from the rubric are still useful, right? The student still gets to see they were very deficient in a certain area, even if my angel of mercy side comes along and props them up a bit. So I do that in a very consistent way. I treat all students the same. So when you're done and you've got the number that you want in this box, you then have hit apply to grade, right? You saw that when we went back to our other tab, so I still have the Feedback Studio on the right-hand side, returning back to the Brightspace tab, and then I hit the refresh button. The refresh button will update this with that current grade. Now I have another opportunity to add more feedback if I wanted to put something written here to explain anything. Then when you're done, you can either save the draft, or if you're all done with this and you want the student to have it back, you can just hit publish and then use these navigational arrows on the right upper hand corner to move on to the next student. So I hope you found this helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.